have a dream, have a plan, do the work.
Mm.
And that was my dream, was to be a ball player. My plan was to go to college. I did that and then, kept doing the work. So, but I appreciate, yeah, I appreciate your comments on that because people don't see what's behind the scenes of success. They just see success, and everyone's got a path. Everyone's got a different path.
Elev8 podcast. I am your host and coach, Tyler Johnson. Thank you for tuning in. And whether you've tuned in to elevate your mindset, your game, or just your day, you're in the right place. My guest this episode combines his successful Major League Baseball career with a master's degree in sports psychology and counseling from Boston University. Despite 2 arm surgeries and several demotions back to the minors, he persevered, going on to win 110 games and make an all-star team. After retiring from baseball, he transitioned to a mental skills and performance coach, where he worked for 3 of the most historic MLB franchises. He went on to also work with players such as John Lester, Rich Hill, Andrew Miller, and Anthony Rizzo, among many others, as well as providing mental skills for a number of college teams. He is also the author of the book 90% Mental. Welcome to the Elev8 podcast, Bob Tewksbury. Bob, how are you doing today?
Hi, Tyler. I'm good. It's a 30, as we tape this, it's a 39-degree day in Wells, Maine on December 21st. So that's a pretty good day.
Yeah, I appreciate it before the holidays. It's just a tad, it's going to get really cold here in Colorado this week. So I think we're supposed to be up.
Yeah, it's coming. Yeah, no doubt. Yeah.
But with that, the holiday. So hopefully some hope and gratitude and joy and all those things. But
Thank you. And back at you. Yeah.
yeah, joyful to have you join us. And I guess I kind of wanted to start. I know your baseball career is kind of one great chapter. And then I just finished reading your book, 90% Mental, not too long ago. And was really curious of what made you want to kind of pivot and get into kind of the mental performance side and really stay involved with baseball that way the last 2 decades?
Yeah, it was totally by chance. I when I wasn't sure what I was going to do when I stopped playing, other than I knew I was going to go back and finish my undergrad. I had 2 years left in my undergrad work, and I knew that I was going to finish that. It was really important for me to do that personally, as well as kind of show the kids that school's important. And they were in like first and third grade, and I was like, Dad's going to school, so everyone's going to school today. But so the Red Sox hired me as a pitching consultant, for a lack of a better word, and I just wanted to. The goal was to be a mentor to young pitchers at that time in AAA, and just kind of get my foot. They wanted me to be the pitching coach in rookie ball, and I didn't want to be in a coaching position every day.
Yeah.
If I was going to commit to that, I would have kept playing until I couldn't play. Um, so it was during that time. I think, did that for a couple of years, and it was a circumstance that happened when I went to Pawtucket to see the AAA team. One of the pitchers confided in me that he had a cocaine issue, and um, so I called the Players Association. So we got to talk to the team, EAP. No, I don't want to talk to the team. No, I don't want to do that. So I called the Players Association and got a hold of the medical director in New York. And he said, if you can get the player to New York City tomorrow morning, I can see him at 8 o'clock.
Mm.
So I drove from Pawtucket to New York City, got him in for his appointment, and drove him back to Pawtucket before he had to be at the field the next day. And he ended up getting some treatment. And obviously the team found out at some point, and they weren't too happy that I didn't direct him in that to the team resources, but nonetheless, it made me realize that, I had more to learn than my prior playing experience to be helpful to players. And um, and the second, so this is twofold. The second part of that's being in spring training and meeting a guy that was named Doug Gardner, and Doug has gone on to work with NFL and his own private practice, and but he had completed his doctorate in sports psych from BU, and he was working with the Red Sox as a consultant, sports psych consultant, and this was 2002 ish. So really hadn't mental skills hadn't really come on board yet.
Sure.
And so anyway, long story short, I'm like, well, if he's doing this, and I have a play, he was a soccer player, and I have a baseball background. Maybe I should pursue this field. So I waited 2 more years before I applied to Boston University. So I was 40 years old. I went back to graduate school, 40, I think 42 years old. I went back to grad school and got my master's in sports psychology and started the Red Sox mental skills program in 2004. So that's the long-winded version. So it's totally by accident. I had no idea that that's something that I would want to do.
I think part of the might not be accident was your career beforehand. I think, like I mentioned to you, kind of in the football world, I think sometimes whether it's psychologists or mental skills, and it has this taboo. But did you find once it really did serve you well, your past experiences and going through, the things you go through, the minor leagues and the major leagues and the ups and downs, that it helped you really be able to connect with the players authentically in a different way
No
than maybe
question. Yeah,
than non-players?
no question. And I even hear that now. I mean, you don't have to have played professional baseball. You don't have to have played that particular sport to work in mental skills,
Sure.
but it doesn't hurt. Um, and to for players to know that you've had the same thoughts and feelings that they have normalizes it. To
Yeah.
know, I had 2 surgeries. I get demoted 7 times. I get traded. I got released. And when they hear those stories, there's a little connection there that without those experiences you wouldn't have. So it definitely helps. What's interesting is another one of my mentors was Harvey Dorfman,
Mm.
and Harvey wrote a trilogy of books, ABCs of Pitching, The Mental Game of Baseball, The Mental Keys to Hitting. And Harvey told me when I got into this field, he said, your experience is going to be a blessing and a curse. And I was like, oh, what are you talking about? How could it be a curse? Um, but he was right, because what happens is a lot of, and I saw this working in pro baseball for 20 years as a mental skills coach, but the players rely on their past experiences, which are their experiences, but aren't necessarily something that you see from 30,000 feet. They're their experiences.
Yeah.
And so when you learn the educational background of the origins of self-talk or negative thinking, or controlling, you know, um, your breathing or arousal or whatever, there's a science behind it. And I think that's really important to have. So what I had to learn, back to Harvey's point, what I had to learn is that I had to take the baseball cap off and put the mental skills cap on when I talk to players, because I had to show them, 30,000 feet, not just my experiences.
Sure. I love that. Um, I'd written down one of the questions you mentioned in your book. I think it's when you're talking about perfection in chapter 6.
Mm-hmm.
I think Harvey might have asked you this, or I can't remember how it came up, but he asked the question is where he said, "Do you know anyone that's perfect?"
Yeah.
Right. And I just love that question. Can you talk a little bit about why, having some processes and routine is going to be a lot more serving to our performance than striving for perfection?
Yeah. I mean, and Harvey would go on to say, then do you know anyone that is? And he was talking with Kevin Brown. I think it's in Harvey's book. Um, and Kevin Brown said no. And then Harvey's reply was, well, why are you trying to be the first one? And then Harvey's other line was, if you go into the bathroom and run the tub and get 4 inches of water in the tub, and if you can step in the tub and not touch the bottom, then you're perfect. So, and I just had this conversation with a golfer. He's on the Corn Ferry Tour, and about perfection and how it's just a never-ending cycle of it's unreasonable. It creates anger and frustration and depression. If you're striving to be perfect, then you're missing the boat on the experience. So I think having I go and exercise with the players of what things can you control, what things can't you control, focus on your controllables, and continuing to come back to that, focusing on their strengths, and relying on their preparation as the way to trust their confidence, that, okay, look, I may be a little, like, when you talk to Justin Sua, he made the comment, you don't have to feel good to play good, and a lot of people think that they do. But
Right.
if you don't feel good, you trust your preparation, and they trust the process, and then you adjust. There's constant adjustment.
Another thing, you kind of touched on it a little bit earlier, but your book talks about, I love kind of, when you came in as a player, how taboo mental skills were. And then obviously by 2004, when you're working with the Red Sox, and then you look at today where most of the teams have a small, a handful of staff doing it. Why do you think, I guess we're going to go Charlie Marr 3 parts here. What kind of, broke down that wall of it being taboo, and then kind of, in that second phase as you were around, accelerated it? And then where do you kind of see the future of it in baseball?
Yeah, well, I mean, when I came up, I remember my wife worked, my girlfriend then, my wife now, she worked in a hospital environment, and very fluid, open discussion. She was in the administration, and I remember my rookie year, Pinella, he didn't like me. I didn't throw hard enough. He had to pick me on the team because I pitched 20 scoreless innings in spring training. But then she goes, just go talk to him. And I'm like, are you out of your mind? I'm gonna go talk to the manager. So anyway, there was no resources to talk to people, and I think there's still some hesitancy from people with the team trusting their mental skills. I was a former player for a long time, as you noted, and I still had players that didn't trust me because I was paid by the team. So the fact of the matter is that anyone in this position, you hope to gain the trust of the players because the relationships are really important, but there's always that little layer that's there. That said, I think the players that are coming in the big leagues now are players that came up in an age at a time where mental skills coaching was starting in the youth levels or in college. They became more aware of it. So it wasn't this foreign, strange thing, number one. And number two, that a lot of the old school players left, the grizzly old veterans who, made it tough for young players. They retired, and then another wave of players came in. Where do I think it's going? I think it's, the field continues to grow. And I think that with advances in more science and, fMRIs, I mean, I'd really love for someone to find out why the yips really happen. I think there's hypotheses, people have done research, but I don't think anyone really knows. It's so multifaceted. But and I just think with that comes budgets, and I think that the dilemma is going to be, if the teams want to invest in science and future science, they can make more significant inroads using that technology to help players in mental skills. But you worked with a team, but
Yeah.
the money goes to the players and not the minor leagues or equipment. So
Sure. Reading your book, I really kind of, acquired my own new appreciation for your resilience and grit throughout your career and your journey. You talked about the mental skills you acquired and situations you put those to use. What was some kind of that fuel that fueled your grit and resilience in your career?
yeah, I just I laugh at there's a scene in The Officer and a Gentleman where he says, "I got no place else to go," and that was it. My parents were both high school dropouts. They were teenagers when I was born. I didn't have anything to go to, so it wasn't like I had something to fall back on. So that made it easy. I think that those challenges that are difficult as a youth, they kind of create some things for you as an adult that are beneficial, and a work ethic, relentlessly pursuing the dream. Um, there were moments that I didn't think that was going to happen, but I had some good physical therapists. I had some good doctors, and I did the work. And I have a saying that I use when I spoke to schools for years after I stopped playing, and I had the saying, "Have a dream, have a plan, do the work."
Mm,
And that was my dream, was to be a ball player. My plan was to go to college. I did that, and then kept doing the work. So, but I appreciate, yeah, I appreciate your comments on that, because it's people don't see what's behind the scenes of success. They just see success, and everyone's got a path. Everyone's got a different path.
yeah, no doubt. Um, Having my opportunities at the ballpark, I got glimpses to that. You see the people, players beating you to the office when you're just an employee sometimes in their games at 7 at night,
Yeah,
putting in
right.
the work. Um, One of the things you bring up in there, I'd love you to just kind of talk about and explain. I remember maybe Ken Raviza, heard it from through him, but the prayer, perfect, and primal. We talked about perfection. Can you talk a little bit about those three modes that we can get into as athletes?
Yeah, yeah. Ken was, and he's another mentor. He's passed away, unfortunately, not long ago. Well, he talked about perfect. He made it in reference to pitching. There's primal pitching, prayer pitching, and perfect pitching. But you can make that case in anything, right? Like you said. So I think primal is just trying harder. Most sport, unless you're an offensive lineman, most sport is not a linear progression with effort. The harder you try, the worse you do in most sports. So being primal doesn't work. Um, and then prayer is just like not trusting yourself. It's hoping. And, um, it's like people say, well, I hope I win the lottery. Well, but did you buy a ticket? And even if you bought a ticket, you don't have a big chance, but at least you bought a ticket. So, prayer pitching is, and prayer performance is not trusting your preparation. It's being unconfident and hoping for something good to happen. And in reference to baseball, there's a lot of times where, I mean, I threw pitches in all three of those. My last game as a Yankee, when Pinella came out to the mound and told me if I walked the next guy, I was out of the game. I threw the next four pitches as hard as I've ever thrown them because I was so pissed off. And I walked the guy and I was out of the game. And 3 days later, I was traded. But I threw a lot of pitches, with prayer, like, oh, I hope this is a strike, and I think every pitcher has. They'd be lying if they said they didn't. But you also know that, I always tell the pitchers that the ball knows. There's a negative, you know, negative ions or inertia or whatever it is, but if I throw this confidently that I'm going to get you out, they pop it up. I mean, Tom Pagnozzi told me the year I made the All-Star team, he said, I don't know how you did it. I won 16 games, had an area of 2.1, and Pag said, you know how many balls you throw right down the middle that they just pop up? There you go. Here, hit it. I dare
Yeah.
you to hit it. And
Yeah.
so the ball knows.
I think too, we always think about the worst thing that could happen. And I always try to tell athletes, like, well, what's the best thing that could happen? And there's a lot of outcomes that are in the middle that, just like you said, ball goes in play, probably going to be an out.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. If they don't put it in play, I'd rather put it in play and have someone have a chance to catch it. But that's true. Everyone, it's catastrophizing, right? It's a limited thinking capacity that everyone, and it's kind of how we're built. If you get into the, caveman ages, it's better to think about what could go wrong than what could go right. But as it relates to sport, yeah, you have to think, I'm gonna make this pitch on the outside corner. I'm gonna hit this shot where I need to hit it. And if you don't, you respond to it. But if you're out there going, oh my God, I hope I hit it, I said in the book, a negative thought never leads to a positive result.
Yeah, I love that. Negative thought never leads to a positive result. Another thing I loved about the book is this. You even stated about how it begins with breath and the book ends with breath. Can you talk about the oft overlooked constant in our life that can be so helpful when we put intention behind it?
Yeah, I have to give credit to the co-author Scott Miller on that. He the way that he weaved that in was really nice. But yeah, I mean, I think you know the ability to slow things down only happens through our breath, to change our physiology. But so many people, so many athletes, people don't use it. We could all, I mean, these are all, as I'm sure you would probably agree with this, but these are life skills. These aren't mental skills for sport. These are life skills. So if your flight's delayed, what do you do? How do you respond? If you're stuck in traffic, what do you do? If someone's going really slow in front of you, what do? You have a choice to respond. But the breath is what starts that. The breath starts with, okay, I just need to chill out here, and you need to take a few deep breaths and slow down. And and I think that it's just not utilized a lot. I think, I know I talked about it in the book, that part of what I talk to athletes about now is, you can't not think negative things, but you can refocus and reframe them. So if I had a negative thought, I would delete, I had to be aware of it. I had to delete it. I would swipe the pitching rubber or tap my leg with my glove. It's like, get out of here. Then I would take a breath. And then I would say, focus on the task. All right, throw a good pitch down and away or whatever. So the breath was a big part of that. And I use it now on the golf course. I see my buddies that don't do it. I see them use negative thinking, like, well, I didn't want to leave it short. And I always say, well, you didn't, or, I didn't want to putt it too hard. Well, you sure didn't, so it's really fun to be the little man, so to speak, like I talk about in the book, to my teammates, my golf mates.
Yeah. My mom was a college golfer in first class at Title IX, and I was too primal as a kid for golf. So it wasn't, pushed too hard. But you talked about reference kind of the thoughts and the self-talk. Sometimes we get on the golf course, we get when we're competing. You talk a lot about in the book, the importance of having anchor statements. And I like how you get into the next kind of deep dive beyond that with the tracks that like Rizzo would use, the kind of
Hmm.
audio. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of having anchor statements to go to, and then the functionality of having kind of an auditory system pre-game to implement
Yep.
those?
Yeah. No, I think the anchor statements are part of what I talked about with uh, that process of self-talk was the task. You focus on the task of throwing the ball down and away. But my anchor statement was just like on the side, because when you throw a bullpen as a pitcher on the side, there's no judgment, there's no umpire, there's no, and it's free and easy. So coming up with something that um, helps keep you thinking about the worst thing that could happen, because that's where our mind goes. So, smooth and easy, or, my golf swing, I came up with one. It was simple. It's like 1, 2. That was my anchor statement, and so trying to get players to come up with something that they can go to. It's like it's no different than a mantra, or people that are meditating and have some, focal point or sound that they make. But it's really important to have that. And the audio programs, I think it's in the book. One of the things that changed my career was finding a cassette tape back then in a mall in Columbus, Ohio. Um, and on one side of the cassette was um, positive affirmations, and on the other side was subliminal messages to these beta beats or whatever, binomial beats and stuff. And I bought it and I listened to that thing every day, and I know I brainwashed myself. I pitched 44 innings, gave up 5 runs, had walked 5 guys. Um, got put on. That's when I got put on the roster, went to spring training, and made the team. But I can still repeat some of those affirmations now. My body. This was 1985. My body responds with ease and flexibility to my mental commands. My movements are smooth and rhythmic.
Mm.
I listened to that. So when I got to the Red Sox, I was like, I got to make a program that people can listen to, that um, goes through the mental tracks to help keep them occupied on bus rides, on plane rides, to just fill up that emptiness that we have, that gets focused on negatives and bad outcomes or the worst case scenario. So I still make them for athletes now. When I work with them, we do a imagery program or whatever they want to do. But I was a big imagery guy, but I did it to music. Phil Collins, "In the Air Tonight" was probably my favorite song to do imagery with, and I'm a big believer in that. Huge.
Was I'm a big fan of that song as well. And they did a survey, I think, a year or two ago, in NFL locker rooms, and they found that was the one of the most popular songs in NFL locker rooms.
No kidding. Yeah.
One last question, I guess, to as we wrap up. We'll give it 2 parts, not quite the Charlie Moore 3-part, but what looking back, what gave you, the greatest joy as a competitor, and then uh, in kind of the next phase, what's given you the greatest joy being able to coach others?
Mm. Um, I think the greatest joy in competing was the journey of competition. The feeling that you get when there's not a better feeling in the world to have pitched a complete game in the major leagues and walk off the field. I mean, that's the best. You prepare for 4 days. You start the game. You have no idea what's going to happen. You're facing major league hitters and some lineups that are really tough, and you have no idea how many runs your team's going to score or how they're going to field behind you. And there's all that energy and that anxiety, and all that builds up, and it builds up over 9 innings. And then when you get that last out, it's just, you're totally sated. It's just the best feeling. So I miss that feeling. I don't miss a lot of the other stuff, but I miss that feeling. And then my greatest joy now is probably helping somebody feel better in the moment. You know, I don't know. You know, I had an interview with parents last week, and they said, "Oh, how successful are you?" And I said, I don't know. Um, I really don't. If I said that, oh, you know, I'd be lying if I said I knew I made a difference. I hope I make a difference, but I do know that during conversations with players, that I make them feel better in that moment, and what they do with it after that, you know, a lot of it's on them. But I think, you know, connecting with somebody in that way and helping them feel better, to just give them a little boost, you know, that's all, and that feels good.